Hello and good afternoon, friends. Welcome once again to the CEC EduSet live lecture. Dear friends, in this session today we are going to study about the origin of Harappan civilization as well as various facets of Harappan civilization such as society, religion, economy and various other facets too. And for this, again with us in our studios is Dr. Shankar Kumar. Dr. Kumar is Assistant Professor in Department of History, Hindu College, University of Delhi. So, first of all, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Shankar Kumar. Dr. Kumar, welcome to the EduSet lecture. And though we studied about the pre-Harappan civilization in the previous lecture, and specifically we are going to start from the Harappan civilization alone, that is from where the Harappan civilization basically started. Its origination is we are going to talk in this particular section. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Geetika. You have already outlined the previous discussion that we have had with relation to the Neolithic context of the origin of Harappan civilization. We have already discussed in great detail about the various layers of Neolithic settlement at the site Mehergarh, which is in the present day Pakistan. And it is in the area which is today you can locate it around the CB triangle in the physical map of the Indian subcontinent. And why this site is important, as we had said earlier also, is on account of the fact that this site is a very crucial site in explaining the indigenous origin of Harappan civilization. When we say indigenous origin of Harappan civilization, obviously we are thinking of some kind of a local versus outside debate kind of a thing, which of course catches attention of quite a few scholars who are talking about the Harappan civilization. And in this context, historians speak about say the impact factor which could have triggered the origin of Harappan civilization from outside, say the contemporary civilizations, Bronze Age civilizations like Mesopotamia, or for that matter in Egypt. We know for sure that around this time, around 2500 BC, when this civilization actually came into being in its mature phase, already we had Mesopotamian civilization thriving as Bronze Age civilization around the present day Iran area, Iraq area. And therefore, that issue is definitely something which is debated amongst historians. But with the discovery of Mehergarh site as a Neolithic site dating to around 7000 to 6000 BC, and it exhibiting subsequent continuous layers as late as up to 3800 BC, which takes us very close to almost the origin of Harappan civilization. And subsequent to that, we have already discussed that there were quite a few, you can say, early Harappan sites or cultures which could be identified. I'll just try to name a few so that the sense of the development around Mehergarh and the area in which subsequently around 2500 BC Harappan civilization came into being becomes clear. So from around 3200 to 2600 BC, which is just preceding the origin of Harappan civilization or the mature phase of Harappan civilization, we have appearance of three cultures almost together converging or covering the entire Indus basin, which was the locale on which Harappan civilization grew. These three early Harappan cultures, which essentially were of course Neolithic cultures, but they were anticipating quite a few features which were to be seen only during the mature phase of Harappan civilization. They are some of the characteristic features. We have already spoken about it, which were interestingly anticipated by these early Harappan cultures, and that's why they are referred to as early Harappan cultures, because essentially they are Neolithic. So we have Kot Diji culture, which is again, as per the convention, named after the type site, Kot Diji, which gives us archaeological evidence from a large area embracing almost the entire northwest frontier province, Punjab and northern Sindh also. Then we have the Sothi Siswal culture, which is again early Harappan site, and this covered northern Rajasthan, Punjab and Haryana area. And then we have Amri Nal culture. Again, this area is very much part of the mature Harappan civilization, and much before the civilization came into being in its mature phase, we see that the area had already been populated, intensive agriculture was practiced, and quite a few cultural features, aspects of mature Harappan life had already been anticipated in these cultures. And this Amri Nal culture covered broadly the area around Baluchistan, central and southern Sindh, and also some parts of Gujarat. And of course, since we have been talking of the aspect of anticipation of quite a few features of Harappan life in these cultures, of course, in terms of commonalities, we can talk of notable advancement in agriculture, with some kind of a conversion of ox into a drought animal, of course using castration. So we also have cart ruts in the pre-Indus level at Harappa. We have cart wheels, cart frames, terracotta bulls are found at Jalilpur. And use of two-wheel ox cart, which is a characteristic feature of Harappan civilization, which is something which is in technique terms is carried over to the present times in the village areas of India. Even today in 21st century, if you go around, you will find similar kind of ox-driven carts being used. And of course, there is some bit of a difference in terms of the wheel technology, that Harappan wheels used to be solid wheels without spokes, devoid of spokes, whereas in the present times, of course, you find spoked wheel, which is a subsequent addition, probably with the coming of the Aryans, that we have the evidence of spoked wheels. But apart from that, there is not much of a difference in technique, and probably this is very much dated to not only Harappan times, but as we can see, pre-Harappan times. And therefore, we have this kind of an idea that these oxen must be used to do agriculture by drawing the plow, which again is testified in the mature Harappan phase. The point is that in the pre-Harappan times, immediately preceding the period when the mature phase of Harappan civilization actually came into being, we already see quite a few distinct features of mature Harappan life being put into practice. They were characteristic feature of some of these early Harappan cultures as well. So of course, these early Harappan cultures did not betray the kind of urban complex or the kind of long distance trade and commercial network, the complexity of life and the urbanization that is betrayed by mature Harappan civilization. Nevertheless, some of the rudimentary aspects of everyday life, for example, food production, the variety of foods, the techniques involved in agriculture, like pulling the plow and so forth, they had already been anticipated in this area, and they are evidenced through the features of these cultures that we are talking of. Similarly, we have coming from Kalibangan, we have the evidence of furrow marks on agricultural fields, which is again very solid evidence of agriculture being or plough agriculture being practiced in this area. And surprisingly, this is pre-Harappan evidence. So it comes from a layer which is not exactly the mature phase layer of Harappa. So this is a pre-Harappan development that we see in the context of agriculture and so forth. Similarly, several winter and summer crops had already been grown in this area from pre-Harappan times itself. So what we today know as Rabi and Kharif crops were already grown in this area in the pre-Harappan times. Also cotton, which is again a characteristic feature of Harappan agrarian life, had already been started. Cotton production had already been started in the pre-Harappan times. Now, despite the fact that Harappan civilization is technically a Bronze Age civilization, and there is a fair degree of usage of copper and bronze in the mature phase of Harappan life, stone did continue to remain the chief material of weapon production, and the coming of copper and bronze technology did not altogether wipe away the earlier tradition of profusely using stone tools or stone as the basic material for tool making. And this is something which is true for early Harappan cultures, as we the cultures that we have been talking of, the three cultures, and this continues to be true even for the mature phase of Harappan civilization. And why I'm telling all these things is because we have to understand the origin of Harappan civilization with reference to the points furnished by the two major propositions. One is talking of the origin of Harappan civilization as some kind of an impulse factor from outside, and the other in terms of the local developments preceding the Harappan period, that is 2500 BC. So if we satisfy the logical argument that or the parameters of this argument that it had an indigenous origin, then we will have to prove that quite a few things which were the chief features of mature Harappan civilization had already been practiced or were in practice in the preceding cultures in this area, in the vicinity of these sites. And it is slow incremental development of these aspects of everyday life, of subsistence pattern, of the settlement expansion and so forth, that something like Harappan civilization resulted. So there is nothing like a vacuum out of which Harappan civilization grew. So if we say that even in the preceding period, quite a few things were happening in this area, which went on even to characterize the mature Harappan civilization in terms of sustaining the huge population and the lifestyle in the Harappan times, they were already actually created, or they had already fructified in the pre-Harappan times. This is not to say that there is absolutely no new element happening around 2500 BC. After all, if there was nothing new around 2500 BC, then how the mature phase is identified? So certainly there were several aspects of everyday life. For instance, the planned cities, the planned roads, the exquisite planning for this drainage system, and quite a few other aspects of the urban life related with transactions, long distance transactions, trade activities, and several other articulations, cultural articulations, which betray urbanism. They were definitely new factors impacting the life around 2500 BC, and that is what adds some kind of spectacular quotient to the Harappan civilization, and that is what gives the value to the mature phase of Harappan civilization. That's why we tend to say that this is now the civilization has reached the mature phase, but the point is that it did not arise out of some kind of a vacuum. There is one cannot say that there is no prehistory to the development that we get to see around 2500 BC in the Harappan context. So it is in this sense of indigenous origin that we talk of such developments. And at Nal and Kalibangan that we talked of in the pre-Harappan context or early Harappan context, say around 3200 to 2600 BC. In the early Indus phase itself, we find that we have several beads of carnelian, agate, lapis lazuli, which are not locally available. They are semi-precious stones which are not locally available, and these stones, these semi-precious stones, continue to be the defining features of the mature Harappan findings, material findings, particularly in the grave goods and so forth. Again, the point that we are saying here is that even long distance exchange, I would not use this word trade, because maybe that in the early Harappan phase, the transactions were not that frequent, or they were not that institutionalized in proper economic sense. Maybe that there could be some kind of ritualistic background to these exchanges, or there could be some cultural aspect of these exchanges. Nevertheless, the fact remains that if lapis lazuli could come to a place like Kalibangan and Nal, then certainly it presumes long distance exchange, because the closest point from where lapis lazuli could be procured on a regular basis is the Badakhshan area, which is around the Oxus River in the Central Asian region. Now, of course, there must have been some kind of a mechanism to transport these semi-precious stones from this area to areas like Kalibangan and Nal, where in the pre-Harappan layers we have evidence of these semi-precious stones. So I am not saying that long distance trade got institutionalized in the pre-Harappan phase itself, but the fact that such a large area was under some kind of intercourse, it could be cultural, it could be ritualistic. Nevertheless, people were aware, and there was some kind of intensification or some kind of regularity with which people were interacting with each other. Distinct cultures in this area were sort of coming together through some form of exchange and contact, and this could have triggered into something more sophisticated, something more intense, something more regular, which we get to see as in the mature phase of Harappan civilization. So it is not a sudden kind of development around 2500 BC, but quite a few things are anticipated, not only things, but quite a few processes are anticipated in the early Harappan times. Similarly, even the mud bricks for building houses, except Kalibangan, where fired bricks were used in the early phase, we find that most of the houses in the pre-Harappan times are made of mud bricks. In Kot Diji phase, which is, as we have said towards the beginning of the lecture, that this is an early Harappan culture. In the Kot Diji phase, Harappa, the size of the site, Harappa, which subsequently we are so familiar of in the mature phase, in the pre-Harappan phase, Harappa's size, settlement size is 40 hectares, which is reasonably huge, judging by the standards of Neolithic settlements. Similarly, in the Sothi Siswal phase, Rakhi Garhi is also 40 hectare site, which is again huge. Why again these things are important is the capacity development of the early Harappan cultures to sustain a population living in these areas on a regular basis that presumes some kind of intensive regular agriculture, evolution of several techniques associated with these activities and so forth. Overall, these are worked out figures. The average size of 291 early Indus sites happen to be 4.5 hectares. And this is an estimate done by Poshel, who has carried out very sophisticated research on Harappan civilization. And again, of these early Indus sites, 34 settlements exceeded the size 10 hectares. So, while the average size of the 291 early Indus sites is 4.5 hectares, of these 291 early Indus sites, 34 settlements had size greater than 10 hectares. So, we are talking of the individual sites and the expanse that it had. So, what does it say? What do we take from this statistics? The thing is that for something like urbanization to happen, one needs a critical degree of social differentiation and economic differentiation. So, that sense of egalitarianism, which is so characteristic of Neolithic sites, is getting dissolved and is perhaps giving way to some kind of segregation, some kind of hierarchization. So, already we see that in the early Harappan times, we have sites of varying sizes in around this time, and quite a few sites are big sites, huge sites, as compared to very modest sites in the early Harappan times. So, some kind of a prelude to the Harappan times, which is a proper Bronze Age urban complex, betraying fair degree of inequality, fair degree of social and economic stratification, as exhibited through some very prosperous urban sites and some very modest rural sites, or some factory sites, or some very empty spaces which perhaps could have been crisscrossed by the pastoralists and so forth. So, the kind of variety, the kind of heterogeneity that Harappan civilization in its mature phase displays is also anticipated in the early Harappan context. Now, this is again in terms of process, leading to urbanization, in terms of process leading to transition from Neolithic egalitarian kind of society to Bronze Age civilizational heterogeneous society is very critical. And this is something which is exhibited by the material findings in the same area. Which again goes on to show that it is to the processes and factors and changes happening in the earlier period that we must attribute the reason so far as the triggering, or so far as the origin of Harappan civilization is concerned. Of course, social differentiation was not so pronounced as it is in the mature phase of Harappan civilization. Seals and symbols of ownership claims are somewhat hard to find in the pre-Harappan or early Harappan sites. We don't have palaces, we don't have monumental buildings as is exhibited in the mature phase, say through the the Great Bath or very huge granaries and so forth. So, although granaries are there, but they are not, they can't be compared in terms of size and dimension to what we find in the mature phase, but they are very much there, and it is the proportion that we should be thinking of. And apart from that, some of the funerary rites are also somewhat different from the mature phase, which gives a space to some of the factors which could have come from outside, which were not perhaps entirely intrinsic to the pre-Harappan times or early Harappan times, early Harappan phase. So, there is fair degree of a space for some contributions, some factors which could have come from outside, which could have not been part of the pre-Harappan developments that we are talking about around 2500 BC. So, it is not only about taking sides that either this is true or that is true. So, it is either only through the external factors, or it is only through the internal factors or the local developments that this civilization grew. However, we find that quite a few cultural practices which essentially were early Harappan also continued to be practiced in the mature phase. For instance, the horned deity, which is almost an iconic feature of mature Harappan seals, depictions on seals and ceilings, is very much early Harappan. So, from Kot Diji, we do have evidence of depiction of horned deity. Similarly, the bull depiction, which is again almost of iconic proportion in the mature Harappan phase, is something that we find from early Harappan sites like Dam Sadat. Mother goddesses, again a characteristic feature of mature Harappan period, is something that we can look at even in the early Harappan phase, even in the period preceding 2500 BC, from sites like Jalilpur, Gumla, Sarai Khola and so forth. Although, as I said, that quite a few things were new. For instance, there is no evidence of writing as such. The Harappan script which came into being were probably new, and we don't have much of a precedence of that. Of course, there could be some scratches or marks, but very convincingly it can't be regarded as some kind of a prelude to what went on to become Harappan script. So, what we find is that quite a few aspects of the early Harappan sites or early Harappan cultures do continue into very much into the mature phase, and it seems that it is on the substratum of early Harappan cultures, and it is on the premise of some of the processes, not only agrarian practices, but also long distance exchange and contacts, that something of the sort of a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization like Harappa could grow on it. Now, of course, in terms of dating as to when this civilization came into being, quite a few things were resorted to. Some were coincidental, some were almost on the basis of some presumptions. But a critical thing in dating the origin of Harappan civilization, say in around 2500 BC, is on account of establishment of contacts between the Mesopotamian Bronze Age civilization and the Indus Valley Bronze Age civilization. So, when historians and archaeologists could testify, could satisfy themselves in terms of actual material findings that there actually was some kind of a material interaction between the two civilizations, that they could arrive at a plausible date for dating the origin of Harappan civilization, because I mean, quite unlike the Mesopotamian counterpart, Harappan script has not been deciphered, and one doesn't know whether it carries dates of dates in the content that we have. In any case, even the content of Harappan script as a specimen that we have is is not very dense, and in the absence of dense content of the written material, it becomes somewhat difficult to decipher the script on account of the absence of regularity with which one syllable or numeral is repeated in the text or in the content. So this is quite unlike the clay tablets on which we find huge written stuff in Mesopotamia, whereas in Harappa, at the most that we have in terms of written specimen is one line, or at the most two lines of syllables or whatever alphabets that they might be using. So it becomes somewhat difficult to date it, but the synchronous, the fact that the two civilizations were interacting, that itself shows that if one of them is dated, then on the basis of logical connection, one can date the other civilization, and it is on that basis that we have been able to put some kind of a date. For instance, in the Mesopotamian records, which is recorded in Sumerian and Akkad languages, we have reference to Meluha, and this reference is from the Mesopotamian royal inscriptions. So Sargon, the king of Akkad, refers to Meluha, which of course is a reference to the Harappans, and we know that the period of Sargon, the king of Akkad, is established around 2370 to 2315 BC. So definitely at around this time, Harappan civilization must have been in its mature phase, because the Mesopotamians are interacting with them. Similarly, at one of the sites from Mesopotamian civilization, Bronze Age civilization around this time, at Ur, we have a cube of polished chert stone of Harappan origin coming from Mesopotamia, and this particular object is dated to around 2150 BC. So again, around this time, the two civilizations were in some kind of a intense contact, intense trade contact, exchange contact. Similarly, again from the same site, or we have evidence of carnelian beads of Harappan make, which were part of the decorations of the royal burial in Mesopotamia. And this evidence is again dated to around 2500 BC. So definitely around 2500 BC, the urban phase or the mature phase of Harappan civilization had begun, because we tend to associate long distance trade and commercial contact with the evolution of urban centers and with the with the evolution of state society on a big scale. So, on the basis of the findings that we just spoke of, contemporary to the Mesopotamian period, Mesopotamian Bronze Age civilization, and also on the basis of radiocarbon datings of quite a few of Harappan artifacts which were probably traded with the Mesopotamians, we have been able to put this date of 2500 BC as the date when the urban or the mature phase of Harappan civilization could have begun. Now, there is another. Before getting into the descriptive details of each site, or at least some important sites of Harappan civilization, let's pause and do little bit of concept points so far as our understanding of the civilization is concerned. The writings of historians like Shri Ratnagar have brought out quite a few interesting features of Harappan life. One such is that if you compare the map of Harappan civilization with the contemporary map of Mesopotamian civilization, of course, they are not very much separated in terms of distance. So, it is the comparison of comparables that we are doing here. What we find is that in Egypt or in Mesopotamia, on the map you will find the settlements and sites dotted, and the same for the Harappan area. Then we find that the concentration of sites, and she calls it, Shri Ratnagar calls it the urban fraction. The concentration of urban sites is more dense in the case of Egypt or Mesopotamia, whereas it is not so dense in the Indus area, in the Harappan area. In other words, we can say that Harappan sites are far scattered. Harappan urban sites are far scattered, and they are not situated very close to each other, as probably was the case in the instance of Egypt or Mesopotamia, which also were contemporary Bronze Age civilizations. Now, again, what do we make out of it? She says that there are quite a few inferences that can be drawn from this. One, that let's think of 3000 BC or 2000 BC times, when the modes of transportation and communications were not very fast. In fact, the fastest mode of transportation in the Harappan times, particularly in the absence of horse, we can think of is ox-driven chariots, ox-driven carts, and and we are talking of the overland transportation. Now, we have typical Harappan sites located far away from each other in a huge area, extending from Jammu and Kashmir and even further north to almost covering the entire Gujarat and some northern part of Maharashtra. In the east, we have the expanse touching almost up to the western UP. And this is a huge area that we are talking of, which was part of the Harappan Bronze Age civilization. And yet, the habitation sites, dense habitation sites, that is the towns and cities, are located or are differentiated from each other by huge stretch of maybe barren land where we do not have much of an evidence of settlement. So, how could this uniformity of culture or material culture or practices be achieved? So, how is it that despite the sites being separated, widely separated from each other, we find regular sized bricks characterizing urban civilization, characterizing mature phase of Harappan civilization, same shape and size and type of the seals and ceilings are found from various sites of Harappa. The same the iconic Harappan pottery, the design on it, the fabric of the pottery is again uniform. The motifs depicted is also quite uniform from the different sites of Harappa in the mature phase. Of course, a part of it we have already discussed were achieved in the pre-Harappan times itself, but over this huge area, how this uniformity could have been achieved given the limitation of transportation and communication that we have already spoken of. And in this sense, so why we are comparing it with Egypt and Mesopotamia is that probably here even in the archaic times, even in the 2000, 3000 BC, given the limitation of transportation and communication, this uniformity could have been achieved because the sites were not separated from each other by far. But in Indus civilization, they are separated from each other by a huge distance, yet there is uniformity. So, what were the agencies through which or who were the agents which brought about this uniformity? Of course, trade, contact, regular exchange, etc. Are spoken of, but let us not also forget the critical role that the pastoralism as a way of life, as a way of as a subsistence strategy could have played in bringing about this uniformity. So, even in the present times, we find that the northwestern frontier area is betraying quite a few instances of pastoral lifestyle, and there are people subsisting entirely on the pastoral resources. They take their ships and other animals to different areas, and they keep moving, and so it is not that all through the year they settle at one place, but it is a long kind of distance that they travel in 1 year, or they have the rhythm of their life, which is actually governed by pastoral requirements and not agrarian requirements. Even to the present times, there are quite a few tribes living in these areas even in the present times, who resort to seasonal migration to different areas, coming even crisscrossing international borders, and that is their way of life. So, what Srinath Nagar says is that maybe that these people, on account of their lifestyle, could have been the harbingers of this cultural uniformity, could have picked up some element of the culture from the area in which they lived for some point of time, and obviously when they moved to some other area, that trait could, or that culture could have been transmitted through them. So, they could have been one agency through which this uniformity could have been arrived at. So, this is a critical thing that we need to understand with reference to our conceptualization of uniformity, cultural uniformity, with the help of which we tend to say that it is one civilization, it is one culture, and it is not coming together, it is not distinct cultures which is conveyed through the material remains of Harappan civilization, which is spread over a very huge area. Another thing which we usually miss out in our drive to understand this civilization as one culture is the sheer heterogeneity that it simultaneously conveys, that it simultaneously stands for. So, it is not one kind of physical terrain to which Harappan civilization is limited to. Rather, it is spread over an area which is even in physical terms very diverse, leave aside the cultural heterogeneity. Now, this appreciation of diversity or heterogeneity comes through only when we look at the individual sites and regions, or for that matter different zones in which Harappan settlement is actually situated. So, there are quite a few distinct areas into which this civilization can be broken into, just to understand the individual physical characteristics of each areas. For instance, the Sheikhpura district or the Sheikhpura area, which is to the right bank of Ravi, near Lahore, we have some preliminary reports. There are 83 habitation sites, and this is a figure provided by Rafiq Mughal. We have 83 habitation sites at the Hakra channel, and the largest of these sites being the site called Ganveriwala. Now, Hakra is also regarded as the lowest stretch of the ancient Saraswati river, which is alluded to in the Rigvedic text, which is of course subsequent to the Harappan period, and probably Ghaggar was a tributary of this ancient Saraswati river. And today this Saraswati and Drishadvati are purely rain fed, but maybe that it received more water in the earlier times, and because its streams today feed Satluj and Yamuna, and it was also perhaps less destructive than Indus. So, what we are saying here is that in the Ghaggar Hakra area, we have a huge concentration of Harappan sites. Now, how do we account for this? Now, it is in this context that we just talked of these details, that maybe that in those times these river systems carried more water, in contrast to their presence today as a mere rain-fed river. And also the fact that it probably was less boisterous of a river, less destructive a river as compared to Indus River, which is prone to changing its course and therefore bringing about fair degree of destruction around the area that it flows. And that probably accounts for huge concentration of population or sites, 83 in number, in the Ghaggar Hakra channel. So, concentration of sites at the lower Hakra could also be explained with respect to the rich reservoir of subsoil water, and therefore the fact that this area, the Ghaggar Hakra area, is by and large quite an arid area. It is devoid of rainfall of any consequence. In fact, the average rainfall in this region, in Ghaggar Hakra area, is around 12.5 to 20 centimeters per annum, which is just not adequate. Not even optimal for a settled population to survive for a reasonable long period of time. And yet we have a huge concentration of population that again could be on account of the fact that the subsoil water was used by these people through wells and water extracting technologies, which needs to be explored and which needs to be worked upon in order to understand and appreciate the kind of lifestyle or the kind of technological development in these areas. Another zone apart from the Ghaggar Hakra valley that we just spoke of is the Central Indus Plains. Now, Central Indus Plains constitutes what we today can understand as the northern frontier of Harappan civilization. This is the main settled area of Harappan civilization. It has sites like Miyavali, Harappa itself, Kalibangan, Banavali, and so forth. Now, the physical feature or the climatic conditions in this area, which is Central Indus Plain, is characterized by some kind of a winter rainfall, which is just about adequate. Remember, while talking about the pre-Harappan context and Mehergarh and so forth, we had spoken of the ecotone issue, where we said that the Harappan civilization grew in an area, particularly Mehergarh grew in an area which is right at the terminal point of the monsoon type of climate to its east and Mediterranean type of climate to its west, and therefore it did have access to some of the features and rains brought by, although weak, significantly weakened rains that were brought by monsoon type of climate as well as Mediterranean type of climate from the western part. So there is some access to winter rainfall in this area in the Central Indus Plain, which is just about adequate. So it ranges in the 25 centimeter per annum kind of a figure, and this is also the area which during the British period, particularly during Curzon's regime, this was the area which were hugely irrigated through drawing channels and so forth. So Harappa itself is 12 kilometers south of the present day Ravi. But there is every possibility that in the earlier times it could have been closer to the river, and not that the site itself was closer, but the river could have flowed closer to the site, and the present situation of Ravi may not perhaps be the exact location with which the Harappans were operating. And so forth. So what we are trying to do, I think there is this constraint of time here. What we are trying to do, which of course we would continue in our further discussion, is we are trying to look at different zones, different physical zones of Harappan civilization in terms of its geographical spread, in order to understand the specific physical features of each zones, and that will help us in making a better sense out of the subsistence pattern which were exhibited by the people inhabiting different zones in the Harappan times. This will tell us that merely painting the entire Harappan civilization with one homogeneous brush is perhaps not like doing justice to the sheer heterogeneity that was displayed even through subsistence pattern and lifestyle of different zones of Harappan life. it also tells us that despite the variety that is betrayed by the settlement pattern and subsistence pattern of Harappan life, there is some agency which is holding it together. Of course, the contours of the political structure, the actual human agents bringing this about, their identification with a particular social group is something that we don't have much idea about, particularly on account of the fact that Harappan script has not been deciphered. So these are some of the constraints, but we shall take it forward in order to have a more realistic and sophisticated understanding of Harappan lifestyle and their subsistence pattern alongside their settlement pattern.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for delivering such a productive session. And Dr. Kumar would be again with us tomorrow, and we would be discussing more. With this note, I would like to tell you all again that if you want to access this particular lecture, you can access it with the help of YouTube, as we daily upload our lectures on YouTube. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.